At the latest in news, current affairs, and your sport. I'm Onati Patyashe, standing in for Lulu Gaboo. But first, over to the news desk.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Nati, and greetings to our listeners. Suspected jihadists have attacked the Morila gold mine in Mali, burning equipment and taking 7 employees hostage. The mining ministry says the incident happened at the weekend and captured employees have since been released. Analysts say the attack highlights mounting security risks in Mali, Africa's third largest gold producer. The country is battling to contain al-Qaeda-linked jihadists that have targeted economic assets and foreign investment. Several civil society groups and human rights organizations are expected to stage protests outside the British consulate in Cape Town, the Durban City Hall, and the British Council in Johannesburg, South Africa. The groups include the Palestine Solidarity Alliance and SA Jews for a Free Palestine, aimed to show support for UK activists from the Palestine Action Group who are in hunger strike in British prisons. The activists were detained for action and demonstrations against Israeli-linked weapons and manufacturer Elbit System and against British military base for sharing intelligence with Israel. Several hunger strikers have been hospitalized as their health deteriorates. Elriz Mashaba reports.
The UK activists from the Palestine Action Group are protesting the prolonged detention without trial, prison conditions and censorship. Some of the demands include immediate bail, fair trials and the closure of Albert factories in the UK. South African civil society groups expressed strong support for them. They are drawing parallels to hunger strikes during apartheid and are urging the UK government to ensure their activists' well-being.
The Road Traffic Management Corporation in South Africa has reported a 125% increase in drunken driving arrests on the country's roads compared to the previous year. A total of 4,106 arrests have been recorded for driving under the influence from the 1st to the 25th of December. The RTMC also revealed that it had arrested 48 people for attempting to bribe officers during the same period. The agency's spokesperson Simon Zwane says this marks the highest number of such arrests ever recorded.
Our law enforcement officers had adopted a hard stance on drunken driving. We deployed officers throughout the country, not just for visibility, but so that they can test drivers, test vehicles for roadworthiness, and look for those vehicles that were not fit to be on the road. So this is the result of that deployment. They stopped already more than 1.2 million vehicles on all the roads, even on the back roads and secondary roads that some people usually use to evade traffic enforcement.
The Stanbic Bank Kenya Purchasing Managers Index shows that Kenya's private sector economy maintained solid growth in December, driven by robust customer demand and increased business activity. The headline PMI stood at 53.7% in December, down from 55.0 in November, indicating a continued expansion in business conditions. Reading above 50.0 denote growth, while those below indicate contraction. Kenyan firms reported a marked rise in activity, sales and purchases, with employment growth hitting its highest rate since November 2019. Lastly, the United States has ended its long-standing guidance that all children receive vaccines against flu and 3 other diseases in a sweeping change that advances one of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s long-term goal. Other vaccines are for rotavirus, meningitis, hepatitis A. The revised schedule went ahead without consulting the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, its independent vaccine expert panel. The CDC has advised parents to consult healthcare providers, as all vaccines previously on schedule will now be covered by insurance. Public health experts warn that the latest rollback could lead to preventable hospitalization and deaths. Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, quarter-final places up for grabs at the Africa Cup of Nations tournament, while Arina Sabalenka defends her Battle of the Sexes match against Nick Kyrgios. Details of these and other stories coming up at 12:30.
This is Africa Update, your pulse to the continent. Stories shaping nations and voices driving change. Stay informed, stay connected, right here on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Well, hello again. I'm Onati Patyashe. Let's give you a sense of what's coming up in this hour. Malawi's president has reshuffled his cabinet, and the Ugandan government has announced a ban on live broadcasting of riots and violent demonstrations ahead of next week's general elections. Well, we are broadcasting live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg. That's in South Africa. We are on DSTV Audio Bouquet, channel 802, and on OpenView on channel 628. And you can live stream us on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as find us on ABC Plus app, available on the Google and the Apple Play stores. Join us in conversation, finding us on X at Channel Africa, numerical 1, and Facebook at Channel Africa, Instagram at Channel Africa 1. You can also subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. Remember also to use the hashtag Africa Update. Well, let's give you a sense then of on today's hashtag Africa Updates and the question of the day. Would like you to interact with us. The question is, of course, Malawi's president Peter Mutharika has reshuffled his cabinet, breaking his long-standing promise to keep the cabinet. What do you make of this reshuffle? We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts on Channel Africa's social media platforms. I'll repeat them again at Channel Africa 1 on X and on Instagram, Channel Africa on Facebook. Or you can send us your comments and voice notes to our WhatsApp number. That's +27 832 88 6684.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
All right, let's take you then to this story. The Ugandan government, in fact, let's start with the United Nations Security Council that met yesterday. Now, they met to debate the legality of a United States military operation that led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro. That's the president of Venezuela. Of course, these news continue to dominate the headlines. Maduro is now facing trial in New York on drug-related charges, including, of course, conspiracy to commit narco-terrorism. The move has sharply divided the council itself, with several members warning it could undermine international law. Let's take you then to our reporter, Lebogang Mabange, who has more for us.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update, only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
All right, we'll have that report momentarily. But for now, let's take you to this news. Malawi's President Peter Mutharika has reshuffled his cabinet, breaking his long-standing promise to keep the cabinet lean. Some analysts have described the reshuffle as a form of political discipline. To discuss this further, we're now joined on the line by Chief Secretary for Government of the Republic of Malawi, Justin Adeg Saidi. So a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's start here. Perhaps give us a sense in terms of just what political factors influence President Mutharika's decision to reshuffle his cabinet, particularly at this time.
Well, actually, the president has a prerogative to appoint cabinet ministers, to reshuffle. It is all in the constitution. So there is nothing that has happened, but it is the normal process that the president at each time he may decide it to appoint or to not to appoint. It is all his prerogative.
And give us a sense in terms of just what the changes are. We do know, of course, he abolished the Ministry of State in the reports that we are seeing. Just give us a sense in terms of what are some of those significant changes?
No, the significant changes are that the Ministry of Natural Resources, Energy and Mining has been split into two. There are so many issues that are taken care by the ministry. So it was imperative that the president should break it into two so that natural resources stands on its own, as well as energy and mining should stand on its own. And the mere fact that a Minister of State is a delegated responsibility, so it was easier even to take it off and remain with the rest of the ministries. So far I can say we have added deputy ministers. There are some ministries that are large, and it was imperative that they should have deputy ministers, so that in the absence of the minister, at least the deputy can handle one or two issues within the structure. And it's just a matter of, for the few, it's a matter of changing maybe positions. Somebody where they say was in lands is now in transport. One was in transport, is now in defense, and one was in defense, is now in lands. Just the reallocation of some ministers.
Yeah. And just for, the benefit of also our listeners, perhaps we can mention too some of those, significant changes rather in, Enoch Kazingeni Chihana, appointed second vice president of the Republic of Malawi, making his return then to the center of the country's executive leadership. Of course, we are looking as well as just, criticism or even just comments around this particular reshuffle. How significant would you say was the president's decision, to abandon his promise of a leaner cabinet?
We may wonder what we mean by leaner, because already still the cabinet is lean. We are talking, we were 24 and we are just 28. There have been instances where cabinet has 40-something ministers or 30-something ministers. But look what 28 is leaner. And to say the fact, even full ministers, there are very few. Just added the deputy ministers for these ministries that are large, and there are a number of activities happening. As the government, we are trying to implement a number of projects, a number of activities for the betterment of all Malawians, and it needed at least to have in some areas some deputies. That's why the president decided to do so.
Yeah. In terms of just again some of the experts' analysis and what has been looked at, particularly as it relates to your cabinet. I mean, you mentioned some of the projects that you will be concentrating in. Speak to us then in terms of the efficiencies that this particular cabinet will bring, particularly also in terms of just enhancing coordination across various departments, as well as bringing in accountability.
Well, issues of accountability are important in any government, and the president has set a tone on a number of issues regarding on how we do our austerity measures, but also at the same time, we'll be able to be adequate to handle all issues that pertain to government operations, because we have now adequate people to handle matters of government, political leadership, but also executive leadership. All those will be able to work together. We had plans for orientation. So we are good to go, and we'll be able to implement what we planned for Malawians.
And in terms of the actual reshuffle, I mean, do you see it as a strategic move, particularly ahead of future political contests or even elections? Just perhaps expand a little bit on that.
No, it's not about maybe future elections or what have you. It is about now. What is that we want to do as a country? And what plans are we putting in place? What people are we putting in place to ensure that we implement whatever we have planned for the people of Malawi?
And when you say, what you have planned for the people of Malawi, is this cabinet reshuffle also a form of strategy by President Mutharika to again gain the trust of the people of Malawi?
Actually, he has already started the trust of Malawians. Through the time the voting pattern happened, you could see that almost everybody wanted him to be the leader. And in that case, he is doing things for all Malawians so that Malawians benefit. Malawians should be away from the hunger, which was like persistent within the country. There are issues of the scarcity of forex, issues of scarcity of fertilizer. We are doing the right things, and the president is helping the country to grow and be able to run away from the dangers that were there before.
Yeah, and just speaking about the reshuffle itself and the effects and the significance of it. Let's look internally now, in terms of the reshuffle effect, in terms of how it will affect the party, if at all, especially when we start talking about the loyalty thereof.
Hello?
Are you still with us? Can you hear me, Mr. Saida?
Hello?
All right.
Hello?
We seem to have...
Hello?
Mr. Saidi, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you say it again? I think there was an interruption.
All right. So we're looking at how the implications, the significance of this reshuffle. I want us to now focus internally in terms of the party itself. How might the reshuffle affect internal party unity, and even I'd go as far as loyalty?
Well, the process of the reshuffle has not affected in any way on issues of political. As you are aware, the president is able to get people from everywhere as long as those people will help him develop the country. People in the party are there, people in different parties are there, people that are just independent, they are also there. So it's like a government for the people of Malawi.
All right. As we continue our conversation, I want us to look at what's happening outside of Malawi, and I want to see if perhaps the Malawian government too has any opinion or position around what is happening from a geopolitical perspective. We have seen two significant developments happening outside of Malawi or the continent, in New York City to be specific, where Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro pleaded not guilty to the charges that have been, leveled against him by the United States of America related to narco terrorism. Of course, this follows those U.S. related strikes. And we also saw the United Nations Security Council having that emergency session yesterday on the same day. Just your position as Malawi on what is happening geopolitically.
Well, at the moment, it's difficult to comment on issues outside Malawi. Currently, we are focusing on what is happening in Malawi. Those that are happening outside, we are able to follow, and normally right decisions are made at different levels. I don't have the powers to either state on what we are for in that regard. But what I can say is, currently, we are focusing on rebuilding Malawi.
That's all. We'll have to leave it there, I would imagine. But thank you so much for your time, Chief Secretary for Government of the Republic of Malawi, Justin Adeg Saidi. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more news for you. And of course, we are looking at developments in Venezuela as well as developments in Uganda.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Tumeona chapisho mapema hii leo ya kwamba Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje ya nchini Marekani imesema inapitia upya uhusiano wake na nchi ya Tanzania. Pengine taarifa hii imepokelewaje na wananchi wa Tanzania?
Cha kwanza tumeiona taarifa ambayo imetoka hii leo. Sisi kwetu taarifa hii haikutushangaza wala haikutushtua kwa sababu tulishaona taarifa kama hiyo imetoka kwenye ubalozi wa Marekani nchini Tanzania, ikiwa imetolewa na Bwana Tom Pigott.
Umezungumza kwa kina kabisa. Haya ni malalamiko ambayo yamekuwa yakijitokeza mara kwa mara. Unadhani sasa wana hoja ya msingi?
Unauliza maswali mazuri sana na maswali ya tafakari. Maswali ambayo hayawezi kujibiwa kwa dakika moja au kwa siku moja. Ni maswali yanayohitaji utafiti, yanayohitaji kusoma.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
So welcome to Africa Update with me, Unati Bajashe. Well, our question of the day is Malawi's President Peter Mutharika has reshuffled his cabinet, breaking his long-standing promise to keep the cabinet lean. We're asking the question, what do you make of this reshuffle? We've just spoken to the Chief Secretary of Government of the Republic of Malawi, Justin Adeg Saidi, saying that the cabinet is still lean and that the president of Malawi is looking at being people-focused and people-centered. We have a number of comments. In fact, I just want to read one or two of your comments that you have given us. Of course, these are on our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1, that's on X and Instagram, as well as at Channel Africa on Facebook. You can also send your comments and voice notes to our WhatsApp number. That's +27 83288 6684. So Emmanuel Ntlane says, I'm deeply sorry for calling it cabinet reshuffle. Rather, they would have just announced that Minister of State is over. What have they reshuffled then upon seeing the same faces on it? You will recall, of course, the new cabinet reshuffle, or rather, comes with the abolishment of the Ministry of State. Gregory Nchama says this president is doing nothing, rather. he just came back to finish Malawians. Of course, those are just some of your comments. Keep them coming. Share your thoughts on Channel Africa's social media platforms, Channel Africa 1, that's on X, and Instagram, Channel Africa on Facebook, or you can send us, as I said earlier, your voice notes, your comments, as well as on our WhatsApp line, +27 832 886684. All right, so let's continue then to give you a sense of what else we are tracking for you today. And I think it is going to be in conversation with one of our correspondents in Uganda, Mike Arering. In fact, before we do that, let's give you a sense of what's happening from the international space. You were watching reports consistently since Saturday following those U.S. airstrikes on Venezuela. And I think that's where we're heading to next in terms of that conversation. The president of Venezuela appeared in a U.S. court yesterday. President Nicolas Maduro pleading not guilty to those charges of narco-terrorism, cocaine importation, conspiracy, and possession of machine gun in a New York federal court. Of course, a laundry list of those charges. Maduro was captured by U.S. forces in Caracas on Saturday and transported to the United States for that trial. During his court appearance, he claimed he was kidnapped and remains Venezuela's legitimate president. Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, also pleaded not guilty to related charges. Now, the couple faces life in prison if convicted. Well, to unpack the legalities of this trial, we're now joined by Dr. Etienne Mutabazi, a lawyer who served at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Dr. Mutabazi, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon.
Of questions posed around the legalities of this particular matter. Perhaps let's start with how international law, views this prosecution of a sitting head of state by a foreign national. We know that, or a foreign court rather. We know that, of course, Venezuela itself had invoked the UN Charter around this matter following those airstrikes.
No, I'm not sure if there is any of the UN Charter articles which applies in this particular circumstance, because the United States is applying its own law and to arrest and prosecute a foreign sitting head of state. So you need to understand that the United States has its own law and Venezuela has its own as well. And there's no way one country can be involved in the arrest of the head of state of another, to start with. In terms of international law, the United Charter in Article 2, sub 4 says a state should refrain from threatening to use force or even the actual use of force against the political and the territorial integrity of another state, except when it is in self-defense under Article 51 of the Charter, or if it is a collective action authorized by the United Nations Security Council. And we do not have any of those two in the particular circumstance. So that's really where the whole issue is. So it's illegal, as you stated. It remains illegal. It remains an imposition by force.
Yeah, and I want to come back to some of the words you're saying, but let me ask you this question then. Does the head of state immunity apply differently in domestic courts versus international tribunals then?
Well, we need to separate issues because the head of state immunity applies to a sitting head of state, which is, we call it personal immunity, means that when someone is a head of state, he cannot be prosecuted internally or even externally. He cannot be like extradited, or what we call functional immunity, which apply when the person is still a sitting head of state and even after assuming that function. So we are in a different situation because Mr. Maduro is not being accused of any international crime like genocide, like war crime, crimes against humanity, or violation of the Geneva or the Hague Convention. None of those. So the Americans are saying which are charging him or as being a narco-terrorist.
Yeah.
And narco-terrorism can be a concern for humanity, but is not an international crime. It can be a transitional international crime, but is not an international crime like the ones we have for the International Criminal Court, which sits in The Hague. So there's none of those.
Yeah, and let's look at those crimes then specifically, if I can. I mean, the U.S. indictment alleges that Maduro oversaw this narcotics network linked to these major guerrilla, groups or cartels, whatever you want to call it. In international law, what evidence or standards must then prosecutors meet to link a sitting head of state to these transactional organized crime? We know, of course, that this court case is back in court in March.
Now, if you can recall my answer to question number one, whatever Mr. Maduro may have done which can qualify as a criminal is still an internal matter within Venezuela. It has nothing to do with any exercise of jurisdiction by the United States. So, to maybe make like a transfer of someone who is suspected of a crime to another country, there need to be some legal arrangement in terms of mutual legal assistance where the government of Venezuela will sit together with that of the United States and say, here is a person whom we suspect or we accuse of having committed this crime. So if Maduro has committed what he's charged with, he may have done so internally, and it falls within the Venezuela state jurisdiction, not the U.S. jurisdiction. That's the distinction that can be made, and no further legal argument can justify the arrest and the prosecution of Mr. Maduro.
Yeah.
We have followed, for instance, just to add on this 1 second, it's that yesterday I followed the representation of the ambassador who represents the U.S. in the Security Council when they were debating, and they said this is a law enforcement operation. So the U.S. has no legal leverage whatsoever to enforce its own law in another state, especially when it concerns its head of state.
Yeah, and in fact, to that point, Maduro did argue that these charges are a cover for U.S. geopolitical and economic interests. And we've seen, of course, a lot of talk around oil. You would, of course, recall President Trump's comments following that particular arrest, if you can call it that. How does international criminal justice guard against, this perception of prosecutions being used as political tools, as we are hearing is the case in this instance?
Just go a little bit back during the Saddam Hussein era when he was accused of having weapons of mass destruction, and the current charges leveled against him when he was apprehended. And even throughout history, people will be responding to the strategic interest of powerful nations than what they will have actually committed in terms of crime. It will even apply to the former president of Serbia, Slobodan Milosevic, and maybe not applicable to al-Bashar of Sudan or Hissène Habré, former president of Chad. But for other heads of state, it's geopolitical, it's all that. And the American this time has been expressed with respect to their pursuit of a geographical interest in terms of having a hands on Venezuela oil.
Yeah, Dr. Mutabazi, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for unpacking that for us. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I'm sure I'll be speaking to you again, given the developments. That was Dr. Etienne Mutabazi, a lawyer who served at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. All right, let's head back to the news desk and give you some of those headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Nati. Malawi President Peter Mutharika has expanded his cabinet from 24 to 28 members in a reshuffle that marks the first major shake-up since Mutharika's inauguration in October last year. Several civil society groups and human rights organizations are expected to stage protests outside the British Consulate in Cape Town, the Durban City Hall and the British Council in Johannesburg, South Africa, with the aim to show support for UK activists from the Palestine Action Group who are on hunger strike in British prisons. And El Salvador's security minister says homicide in the Central American country dropped significantly last year, crediting the government's ongoing crackdown on gangs. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
It's a very good morning from the sports desk. Overall, a good afternoon from the sports desk. We'll start with the story. So Nigeria head coach Eric Chell has moved swiftly to douse any potential tension between his star forwards Victor Osimhen as well as Ademola Lookman, insisting the brief on-field spat will not be allowed to disrupt the Super Eagles Africa Cup of Nations campaign. Now, speaking after Nigeria's emphatic 4-0 victory over Mozambique at the Complex Sportive de Fez on Monday night, a result that sealed their place in the quarterfinals, Charles said the matter would be dealt with internally and would not distract from the team's objectives. Now, television footage showed Osimhen appearing to exchange unfavourable words with Lookman shortly just before the striker was substituted.
So this is the question about my management and what happened in the pitch. We'll stay in the group. I don't need to tell you what happened or what will happen. So my management, I keep that for me, and everything that happened in the life of the group will stay in the life of the group. So we will see after and we will talk.
Meanwhile, Lookman reacted to what happened on the field of play when asked about that commotion between himself as well as Victor Osimhen.
No, I've not seen him. I've not seen him. But I don't really think that's really important. I think the team won 4-0. Nick is our number one guy. Everybody knows this. The top striker, top player, so all of the rest of that is not really important.
All right, so we'll stay with the AFCON. Algeria will face the Democratic Republic of Congo in the AFCON round of 16 tonight in Rabat. Kickoff is at 6 p.m. Central African time, with Algeria aiming to preserve their unbeaten record against the Leopards. Now, the Algerian side top Group E with 3 wins from 3 matches, their best start since lifting the trophy back in 2019. The Democratic Republic of Congo, meanwhile, finished second in Group D behind Senegal, extending their run of consecutive group stage unbeaten campaigns to 2. They beat Benin as well as Botswana and drew with Senegal. Algeria have never lost to the Democratic Republic of Congo in 7 meetings, including a 1-0 AFCON win back in 1998 as well as a goalless draw back in 2000. On the tennis court now, Aryna Sabalenka defended her Battle of the Sexes match against Nick Kyrgios after she opened her 2026 campaign with a 47-minute victory against Kristina Buska. Now, the women's world number 1, Sabalenka, lost 6-3, 6-3 to Kyrgios in a match-publicized exhibition match in Dubai last month. The Belarusian Sabalenka, a 4-time major winner, said it helped her fitness after she swept aside Spain's Buska Madagascar, who's ranked 28th in the world following a 6-love, 6-1 victory in the second round of the Brisbane International. The match, though, was widely criticised, with Wimbledon champion Iga Swiatek saying this week that it did not have anything to do with social change following the battle, or rather the original battle of the sexes between Billie Jean King as well as Bobby Riggs back in 1973. But Sabalenka said the match brought so many eyes on tennis. We'll stay with tennis. Emma Raducanu, meanwhile's comeback ended in a defeat as the Great Brit was knocked out of the United Cup by Greece. The 23-year-old, returning from a foot injury, lost 6-3, 3-6 and 6-1 to Maria Sakkari in yesterday's decisive group stage tie. Raducanu had withdrawn from her opening match against Naomi Osaka as a precaution, but then showed encouraging signs of movement and fight before fading late on. Britain missed the chance to reach the quarterfinals with Raducanu's loss following Billy Harris's narrow singles defeat earlier in the tie. Just gone 12:40 p.m. Central African Time. That concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. There'll be more sporting updates with the Upside team in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Gaboo.
Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi has now accused Rwanda of violating the peace deal. Are you surprised at this latest accusation? This is literally days after a signing a ceremony, so to speak.
This is not surprising. I mean, if you ask Paul Kagame, he would also say almost the same thing. One should ask a question. The broker of the peace deal, President Trump, what is it that he wants? Why now? And why is this peace deal being signed in the Americas and not in the Great Lakes? Paul Kagame has never respected Tshisekedi, as often say. Tshisekedi must deal with the problems in his country. He has nothing to do with it. So this peace deal, obviously, when it was signed, one just looked at it and said, this will not last.
Kenny Matiba, former journalist.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update, only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Well, welcome to Africa Update. I'm Onati Pagyashe, standing in for Lulu Gaboo. Let's continue then with our discussions. The Ugandan government has announced a ban on live broadcasting of riots and violent demonstrations. That's ahead of the general elections that are scheduled for next week, saying such coverage can escalate tensions and spread panic. While ahead of the 2021 elections, authorities cracked down on supporters of Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobby Wine. Amnesty International reports that security forces have begun repressing his supporters through arbitrary detention, assaults and torture. This comes as both Kyagulanyi and President Yoweri Museveni continue campaigning across the country. But for more on this, let's now welcome our correspondent in Uganda, Mike Arereng. Mike, a very good afternoon to you. As we get then your situation on the ground, speak to us about what exactly does the government's ban on live broadcasting cover, and when does it take effect?
Thanks, Yunato, and good afternoon, dear listeners of the mighty Channel Africa. This is Mike Karelen in Kampala, Uganda. Well, the countdown has begun with only 9 days left before Ugandans cast their votes in the election to be held on 15th of January 2026. Well, government action to ban several activities, including live broadcast, riots, and procession, is a result of fearing civil unrest as the opposition is gaining more support during the campaign trial. And The ruling party is in panic mode of anticipating riots ahead of election. Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu, the 43-year-old leader of the opposition National Unity Platform, has caused a political storm, shaking the ruling party National Resistance Movement, which has been in power for the last 40 years. He is advocating for protest votes. Several Ugandans, especially the youth, want change, and Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu is appealing for that change. Wants to create jobs for the young people, wants good governance, fight corruption and nepotism, which is a common practice. Service delivery, also quality education, medical care, and attractive salaries for teachers, public servants, security personnel, and good care for elderly people.
Yeah, I mean, 9 days before those elections, speak to us about, as we get your background on what's happening on the ground ahead of those elections. I want to know how media houses, how journalists are responding to this broadcasting ban. I mean, if you reflect back on the restrictions that were imposed during the 2021 elections especially.
Well, on the part of the ban actually taken over by the government, most of the private television and radio stations are actually facing it rough because even the journalists have been intimidated and most of them have been arrested and beaten. So it is actually not a good situation, especially for the private media. But on the part of the government mouthpiece, that is Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, it is the only one which is allowed to broadcast live all events. But Ugandans are too clever because what they are doing right now, they are using the social media, TikTok, WhatsApp, and Facebook in order to send messages there and then in real time. So what I can say, though the government has taken some measures of trying to shut down live broadcasts from various places, it is very easy for the local people to garner the news through the social media. So social media is the one actually servicing the people, though there is an indication that the government probably next week will shut down the internet. So we are still waiting for that.
I mean, notwithstanding, of course, what you are saying in terms of how people will utilize social media too, give us a sense then in terms of just the apprehension from Ugandans ahead of this election. What is expected, particularly when you look at the current state of the nation?
Well, there are different reactions from the masses. Because as I speak right now, the opposition is actually gaining more and more support, and it's actually causing a threat to the ruling party of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. On his part, President Museveni, I can say, is advocating for health for all when he's addressing his supporters. Ugandans right from village level and want Ugandans to support the parish development model, a project in which government gives out funds to enable people to engage in farming, poultry, and fishing. President Museveni is also boasting of building an economy which was in shambles. He also talks of the universal primary education for all children and talks of rural electrification and health care for all. But several Ugandans are saying President Museveni has no new ideas as he keeps on repeating his promises. Ugandans want him to hand over power to another leader. Incumbent iron grip on the Ugandan military makes it nearly impossible to imagine a peaceful transfer of power. But I can say that both incumbent President Yoweri Museveni and Robert Kyagulanyi are attracting huge crowds in the political rallies. Kyagulanyi has got more support in central Uganda, Busoga region, and West Nile region, while President Museveni still commands large following in western Uganda and eastern Uganda. His campaign has faced a lot of challenges, but he is still firm, that is Kyagulanyi, in winning at the ballot. So we are still waiting for the big day to come.
Yeah, very quickly as we wrap up our conversation, Mike, in terms of observer missions and also even, organizations like Amnesty International, what's the sentiment there in terms of their role come these elections?
Well, they are keeping an eye, more especially to the security measures which have been taken by the government. Police have been actually blamed for the cause of violence, for the cause of beating people and also arresting, more especially the opposition members, more especially those who are supporting Robert Kyagulanyi. Kyagulanyi, on his side, is having it rough because the police have been blocking his trips to, more especially up country. When he's traveling, he has been blocked. But on several occasions, the supporters have been attending in massive. You find that a very big number of people do attend Kyagulanyi rallies whenever he goes. And this has caused actually commotion, especially in the security circles, whereby most of the police are actually arresting and harassing and intimidating the population. So the Amnesty International and other human rights defenders, they are actually trying their level best to see that the government is actually avoiding such confusion, because if we remember in 2021 during the election, more than 70 people were killed by the security personnel immediately after the election. So this time around, the citizens are actually already afraid of even participating in the election.
It's just speaking about those political gatherings and rallies. What role are security forces currently playing? I mean, what are some of the things that you are observing, particularly as we reflect to those 2021, elections?
Well, this time around, the police, Uganda police force, actually recruited more than 3,000 police officers who will be deployed in around the country, more especially around the polling stations. But what I can tell you is that though the chairman of the Electoral Commission, Justice Bakama, has told the voters immediately after voting they should go back home, the leader of the opposition, Robert Kyagulanyi, is telling the people that once they vote, they must remain at the polling station. So this one is going to cause a rift between supporters of Robert Kyagulanyi and supporters of the ruling party, National Resistance Movement, because most of the supporters of Kyagulanyi are saying that they are ready to defend their vote, and immediately after voting, they will not go back home. So there will be a commotion which is expected immediately after casting their votes. Because according to the electoral law, the voters are supposed to be away, about 20 meters away from the polling stations. But you can imagine if there is a big gathering, it appears that the gathering will be able to take over most of the polling station, and the police will come in and there will be a fight.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for that update. Mike Arereng, live for us there from Uganda. That's, of course, as a Ugandan government has announced a ban on live broadcasting of riots and violent demonstrations ahead of the general elections scheduled for next week. Of course, some reports suggesting that Uganda denying that it plans to block internet during these particular elections. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
All right, welcome back. Let's take you to this very quickly. Political analyst Jean-Donald Talatsi says the re-election of Central African Republic CAR's President Faustin Archange Touadera is an opportunity for the incumbent to bring about peace and security and social economic progress to the CAR. The provisional results indicate that President Faustin's secured 76% of the votes, ensured that he remains in office for a third term following the December 28 presidential poll. Tutongo Beni compiled this report for us.
The re-election of Central African Republic CAR's President Faustin Archange Touadera for a third term following the December 28 poll comes amidst concerns that the elections were not free and fair as the opposition boycotted the election. More than 2.4 million people registered for these elections, which observers described as largely peaceful despite delays caused by late polling materials and problems with the electoral register. The preliminary results show that Touadera secured 76% of the vote, while his closest challengers, Anicet Georges Dologule and Henry Marie Dondra, both former prime ministers, received 15% and about 3% of the vote respectively. The 68-year-old was widely expected to win after the main opposition coalition boycotted the election, citing concerns about electoral fairness. Political analyst Jean-Donald Talatsi says the boycott therefore makes it difficult to say these elections were free and fair, with the trend being popular within the African continent.
It's difficult to make the claim that the elections were free and fair in the Central African Republic. Already there were calls for boycott by opposition parties. And that's already an indication that free and fair election didn't take place because the rule of the game were not in favor of everyone. Hence, the claim was made not to participate in an election such as that one. So competitiveness is the biggest challenge facing the African continent. We see in a lot of countries where free and fair elections are always a challenge to secure political opponents.
Talatsi says Touadera's re-election is an opportunity for the president to bring in peace and security and economic progress that will benefit the people of the CAR.
Touadera's election is an opportunity for the incumbent to bring about peace and security and socio-economic progress as well for the people of Central African Republic. This is a country that has known a lot of instability, political instability, coup d'etats, and also violence, a lot of violence between the Christian and the Muslim, which prompted, the Russian to intervene. And today we also have Rwandan forces on the ground to keep the peace and stability, in the country.
The former mathematics professor has faced heavy criticism after a 2023 constitution removed term limits, allowing him to keep running for office, which Talatsi says the referendum was indeed designed to keep the president in office.
The constitutional referendum was only designed to give a legal standing to the project of capturing power by Touadera. And that's exactly what he did. And today it becomes law because when the Constitution of the Republic is tampered with to reflect a certain agenda, it becomes law. And that's what we see in Central African Republic.
Talatsi says Rwanda and Russia played a key role in Touadera's victory and to also maintain the upper hand against the rebels.
Rwanda and Russia have played an important role in stability in Central African Republic in terms of securing the elections, and also by also keeping Touadera in the sense that the rebel movement in that country have not been able to have an upper hand, to overthrow or to threaten significantly, the power of Touadera.
All right, that report there by Tuto Ngobeni. Of course, this is bringing us to the end of our show. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Of course, The Upside with Deboho and Matseko up next. This has been the Africa Update. And of course, don't forget our question we're asking you on today's hashtag Africa Updates asks. Malawi's President Peter Mutharika has reshuffled his cabinet, breaking his long-standing promise to keep the cabinet lean. What do you make of this reshuffle? Keep those responses coming. Thank you so much for those that have engaged with us today. From me, Unati Patyashe, Kamnandi.
Your window to the continent and beyond.